Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea says it's in discussions with the United States on a deal for Seoul to borrow an amount of vaccine doses to be repaid in kind when Seoul's own production gets into full gear. The idea was reportedly discussed last week with U.S. envoy John Kerry. South Korea reports more than 500 new cases of COVID-19. It's aiming to ramp up its vaccine campaign and get 12 million people inoculated by June. And Tesla CEO Elon Musk says his company's self-driving technology was not involved in a crash last week in Texas. Police think it might have been, though, and will be getting a warrant so they can investigate. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. Seoul's foreign minister says discussions are underway for a bilateral vaccine swap with the U.S. Concerns have been rising about potential holdups in procuring vaccines, but the local health authorities say they still plan to achieve herd immunity by November. Yoon Jung-min reports.
South Korea and the U.S. are discussing a bilateral vaccine swap. When asked at a National Assembly session on Tuesday, Foreign Minister Chung Eui-yong said the issue was discussed when U.S. climate envoy John Kerry visited Seoul over the weekend.
We're discussing the issue seriously with the U.S. and talk intensively about the matter with climate envoy Kerry when he visited here.
A few months ago, the opposition People Power Party has suggested establishing a vaccine swap program where South Korea secures vaccines for emergency purposes from the U.S. and returns the borrowed amount later when it starts producing more vaccines. Chung added that issues surrounding vaccines were also discussed with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken when he was in Seoul in March. When asked whether he thinks Seoul's strategic ambiguity between Washington and Beijing would affect South Korea's vaccine procurement, the foreign minister added political issues and the vaccines are separate, regardless of whether Seoul joins the U.S.-led Quad coalition. He added the U.S. and the EU see those issues as not linked in principle, calling it decoupling. Amid concerns on vaccine procurement, the South Korean health authorities have pledged to inoculate 12 million people in the first half of this year and finish giving second doses to some 36 million people by November. U.S. drug maker Moderna, in the meantime, reportedly plans to set up a vaccine supply network in South Korea. According to a report by local market analysts, Moderna plans to set up subsidiaries in South Korea, Japan, and Australia in 2021. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in, speaking to a regional forum Tuesday, said Asia needs to fight the war against COVID-19 together and win it. In a video message for the annual conference of the Boao Forum for Asia, President Moon said he hopes the region will be able to set an example through the Northeast Asia Cooperation Initiative for Infectious Disease Control and Public Health. That's a joint initiative with the U.S., China, Russia, and Mongolia. Take a listen.
개발도상국에 대한 백신 기부와 같은 다양한 코로나 지원 활동을 펼치고 있는 중국 정부의 노력을 높이 평가하며 한국도 공평한 백신 공급, 원활한 인력 이동, 과감한 재정 투자 등 코로나 극복을 위한 협력을 더욱 강화해 나갈 것입니다.
President Moon went on to say that the world will eventually overcome COVID-19 and that South Korea will do its best for mutual prosperity in Asia as a responsible middle power. This year's Boao Forum, under the theme A World in Change, is being held partly in person and partly through video conferencing. South Korea confirmed 549 new cases of COVID-19 on Tuesday, down from the 600s where the daily figures were last week, but still high enough to keep the local health authorities on their toes. 529 were local transmissions, of which 66% were in the densely populated Greater Seoul area, as clusters continued to emerge from religious facilities, restaurants, workplaces, and schools. A public institution and a restaurant in western Seoul have been linked to 17 cases. A workplace in the capital's southwest has been linked to 14, and a diner in eastern Seoul to 12. The country's total number of cases to date now stands at 115,195, and with one new death, the death toll is at 1,802. The World Health Organization has decided to extend the global state of emergency over the pandemic by another 3 months. The WHO is also calling for vaccines to be shared fairly, saying that would be enough to get the situation under control in months. Lee Kyung-eun has this story.
The World Health Organization has decided to extend the state of global health emergency over COVID-19 by 3 months. The Director General, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, made the announcement at Monday's briefing based on advice from the COVID-19 Emergency Committee. The committee agreed that it is still an extraordinary situation as the virus continues to spread and interfere with international traffic. It also warned that the pandemic will not come to an end unless COVID-19 testing kits, vaccines, and treatments are fairly shared among countries. The Director General particularly emphasized the importance of collective vaccination efforts and the rewards such efforts may bring to the world.
We have the tools to bring this pandemic under control in a matter of months if we apply them consistently and equitably.
Global climate change activist Greta Thunberg, joining the briefing virtually from Sweden, called the vaccine nationalism of rich countries a major obstacle to achieving an equitable distribution of vaccines.
It is completely unethical that high-income countries are now vaccinating young and healthy people if that happens at the expense of people in risk groups and on the front lines in low and middle-income countries.
To overcome this reality, the committee advised countries to promote global solidarity by supporting the global vaccine sharing platform, the COVAX facility, and engaging in technology transfer. It also recommended that the WHO accelerates the evaluation of COVID-19 vaccine candidates and continues to monitor potential vaccine safety globally. The next meeting of the committee will be held in 3 months. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
The U.S. State Department says it's expanding its do not travel guidance to approximately 80% of the countries in the world, calling the pandemic an unprecedented risk to travelers. The new list has not been released yet, but this would imply an additional 130 countries. Right now, there are 34 countries listed as do not travel, which is the highest level of the 4-tier system. South Korea is currently at level 2, increased caution. Tesla CEO Elon Musk says his company's automated driving systems had nothing to do with a fatal crash last week in Texas involving a Tesla that the police think might have had those systems installed. The police are planning to get a search warrant so they can investigate that possibility. So Young reports.
Elon Musk has denied it that Tesla's automated driving systems caused a car crash in Texas. He tweeted on Monday local time that according to his company's review, the car did not have the full self-driving package and that its autopilot package, Tesla's partially automated driving system, was not enabled. He added that the road where the crash took place did not have the required lane lines, which autopilot needs in order to operate. Responding to Elon Musk's comments, Texas police will obtain a search warrant against Tesla on Tuesday local time to secure data from the crash so they can determine whether the company's autopilot was active when the crash happened. On Saturday local time, the 2019 Tesla S was driving at high speed near Houston. The electric vehicle failed to negotiate a curve and came off the road, crashed into a tree, and burst into flames. 2 passengers were in the car, with one person being found in the front passenger seat and the other in the back. They both died in the crash. Local police said they believe no one had been behind the wheel, but added that they are still investigating. Tesla's automating driving system comes with 2 packages for purchase: autopilot and full self-driving, or simply FSD. Autopilot can adjust the car's speed automatically based on the traffic and perform some assistance in steering. FSD's features include allowing cars to change lane and park by themselves. Tesla first released a beta version of FSD software to some customers in October last year. Musk said last month that Tesla plans to increase the number of participants. However, both systems are still intended for use with a driver who has their hands on the wheel and prepared to take over at any moment. Following the car crash, Tesla's share dropped 3.4% on Monday, closing at $714.63. 서은경, Arirang News.
Because of a new law that took effect late last month, most of South Korea's smaller cryptocurrency exchanges will likely have to shut down in the coming months. The law requires the exchanges to open up their own certified bank accounts to send and receive money to their customers. But banks are reluctant to give them these accounts because the exchanges don't have the resources to sufficiently prevent money laundering, as the law requires them to do. Kim Jae-hee has this report.
Most of South Korea's roughly 100 cryptocurrency exchanges are at risk of closing down by the end of September or sooner due to a new regulation that took effect on March 25th. To prevent cryptocurrencies from being used for money laundering, the exchanges now have to register their business with the Financial Intelligence Unit, the country's anti-money laundering agency, within 6 months and have to meet AML requirements, such as identifying their customers and keeping records of their transactions. To get registered, each exchange must partner with a bank that will create a certified account for it, through which customers will send money to the exchange. By opening this account, the bank would be vouching for the security of the exchange and taking responsibility for AML monitoring as well. Reluctant to take on this responsibility, banks are subjecting the exchanges that apply for accounts to strict screening of their transparency, risks, and business practices. According to Yonhap News Agency, only the 4 biggest exchanges, Bitsum, Upbeat, Coin1, and Corbit, have so far clinched such an arrangement with the bank so far. An expert says he expects very few exchanges to qualify.
It's very difficult for small and medium-sized cryptocurrency exchanges to qualify under this new regulation. I think only about 5 or 10 exchanges will succeed in registering by September 25th. The others that are not ready should be preparing to close down. And there need to be discussions about how to protect the crypto investors who use these exchanges.
He advised caution when investing in cryptocurrencies and to be aware that the exchanges could suddenly shut down. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for making time today. Good to have you back on.
Good afternoon.
Well, stocks on Wall Street backed off from their new highs on Monday, taking a breather. Tech stocks on the Nasdaq down more than the others. What's the story in the global markets?
Yes, on Monday, the Dow Jones retreated about 0.4%, and S&P 500 fell about 0.5%. And actually, the tech-heavy Nasdaq underperformed its peers, falling by about 1%. After rising quite significantly in the past a few weeks, we saw some correction coming in from U.S. market because of the reasons behind this is not anything more than just some technical correction rather than anything related to the fundamental issues. If you look at the consumers' overall consumption numbers, the retail sales numbers are up by 27.7% year on year. We are seeing quite significant recovery, and also the vaccine side, it seems to be working. Actually, the overall economic activity seems to be pretty much normalizing. However, we saw some interest rate hike, or not hike, but interest rate rise from the 10-year government bond rate above 1.6%. And that kind of caused some concern about whether these economic activity might translate into some possible inflationary pressure. However, though, we think that right now is quite a stable period where the equity market seems to be showing quite good rising trend because of the earnings growth rate and quite reasonable economic growth rate and quite reasonable inflationary pressure. All in all, there are some concern about the VIX number might be rising in the future, and the volatility might come back to the market because we've seen quite strong market in the past several months or so. But we don't think that will be the case because economic numbers are going to be quite supportive for the equity market in the future.
And in local stocks, it was another gain today. The Kospi closing above 3,200 points. The Kosdaq was down in the morning, but recovering that and posting a small gain. Tell us about the Korean markets.
Yes, Korean market is one of the leading market amongst all the global equity market. Today, Kospi was up about 0.68%. As you said, it reached well above 3,200 territories, not far from the January peak of 3,266. And also Kosdaq, as we talked about before, it has hit above 1,000 level in the last 21 years. First time in 21 years, and it has shown continued rising trend today, and it's up about 0.24%. If you look at Korean economy, Korea is very export-oriented, and it is quite geared towards the economic activity on global scales. We are all saying that economies are improving for global level. The global economic growth rate this year is expected to recover well above 3%. If you look at U.S., they're talking about 8%. China also talking about very high number of 6% plus. All in all, we are expecting economic growth rate recovery in a global scale. And if that's the case, then Korea being highly export-oriented, and also Korea being very focused on the growth sectors such as semiconductor and electric cars and others, we think that Korea will continue to benefit on this cyclicality. And therefore, we think that the Korean market has more room to further rise in the future.
Well, Mr. Yu, a big story this week, the South Korean government launching a crackdown on the use of cryptocurrencies for things like money laundering and tax evasion. The police will be given more tools also to trace transactions. Tell us about this crackdown and what effects do you think it might have?
Yes, as you said, the South Korea have said that it plans to crack down on any illegality involving cryptocurrencies, such as money laundering until June. If you look at the price movement of these virtual monies, it actually, we saw some, kimchi premium, what they say it, which is actually the prices that is trading in Korea is even higher than the outside of Korea. So obviously, clearly, there's a lot of interest and a lot of money inflows to the cryptocurrency market. And this is the reason why FSC have said that they'll be tightening the monitoring of this virtual money transactions. We think that that is a necessity given the fact that we did see quite significant premium attached to these cryptocurrencies. Now, going into the future, if we look at what the Bank of Korea have said, and they're talking about some kind of the cryptocurrencies, the government will provide the currency, electric currencies, or in the futures, and then trying to reduce this kind of transaction that's happening in the virtual money side. However, though, I think that the liquidity conditions of Korea as well as global market is very ample, and that Korea is showing M1 growth rate of above 25%, and that means is that the value of currency goes down as the more liquidity is injected. So therefore, the interest towards holding these cryptocurrency will continue to remain to be very high for Korea. And Korean people being very interested in this segmentation, they will continue to put money in despite all this crackdown that we're expecting.
And Bitcoin happens to have been down sharply in the past few days. There seems to be a lot of factors at play. You mentioned all the liquidity out there, but also regulations and rumors of regulations. What do you see happening in the crypto space going forward?
Right. I don't think that these bitcoins and the cryptocurrency are going to be a substitution for real money. It's not going to replace dollars. It's not going to replace Korean won. Because if that's the case, then you are not going to have government or central bank, because then the role of central bank diminishes by a significant amount. So we don't think that you look at these cryptocurrency as a substitution for the real currency, but we look at the cryptocurrency as a bit of a substitution for alternative assets such as gold or silver. In the last 5,000 years plus, always there have been transaction of gold, because that is a substitutional or alternative assets other than the coins or the real currencies. And always people are interested in to hold on to some kind of alternative asset, gold and silver. Once again, the characteristics of cryptocurrency are very similar to these rare metals. Given the fact that it is very rare in terms of additional digging of this cryptocurrency, it can be happening because there's a limited supply of that. And once again, with the huge liquidity injection that you're seeing global scale, the currency value goes down, and so therefore interest towards the alternative assets rises. But only difference is that, though, it was substituting the gold value, we think. And if you look at the gold value right now, it's about $12 trillion, whereas the cryptocurrency value is Bitcoin about $1 trillion, other cryptocurrencies another $1 trillion, so total about $2 trillion. So then it is about less than 20% of the overall gold value. So we think that if further substitution happens, then the cryptocurrency value will go up further. Because the cryptocurrency are used to transact some kind of value or items or goods through the internet. So we think that it's more attractive than just the gold itself as an alternative asset. So we think that there will be some kind of continuation of substitution between gold and cryptocurrencies. And so therefore, the cryptocurrency is not going to go away. However, as the government cracks down or government puts a heavy regulations, then the speed and the rise will be limited, and substitution for gold will be limited as well. So we think that this will last, but I think the speed of the rising trend will be probably going towards a bit more timid.
Got it. All right, Mr. Yu, we'll have to leave that discussion here for today. Thanks so much for sharing your insights with us, as always.
Thank you very much.
The British government has vowed to block the formation of a new European Super League in football and says there could be penalties for the 6 English football teams that have signed up to join. The Super League would see Europe's richest clubs play each other in a format many fans say damages the sport's traditions and makes the rich clubs richer. The UK's sports minister met on Monday with England's Football Association, which opposes the formation of the new league, and he told the FA that it has the government's full backing. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, also said the government will step in if necessary. The European Super League, as announced on Sunday, would have matches midweek among 15 of Europe's biggest clubs. The European Union has expanded its sanctions against the military leadership of Myanmar, targeting 10 more officials and 2 military-controlled companies for their role in February's coup and what the EU says are serious human rights violations. Lee Sung-jae reports.
In response to the coup and the suppression of peaceful protests in Myanmar, EU nations on Monday placed further sanctions on the country's military leadership. This time, they target 10 military officials as well as 2 military-controlled firms. In a statement by the Council of the EU, the individuals targeted by sanctions are all responsible for undermining democracy and the rule of law in Myanmar and for repressive decisions and serious human rights violations. It added the 2 targeted companies are large conglomerates that operate in many sectors of Myanmar's economy and are owned by the military, which provide revenue for it. According to Germany's Foreign Minister Heiko Maas, the goal is to force the military junta into talks and bring them to the negotiating table. Despite various sanctions, the international community has been unable to get the military junta to stop its violence against protesters. The EU's latest measures come on top of sanctions adopted last month, which targeted 11 high-ranking Myanmar military and administration officials. In total, the EU has sanctions on 35 officials and 2 companies. Meanwhile, the head of the military junta, Min Aung Hlaing, is set to attend the ASEAN summit in Indonesia this week, his first known foreign trip since he seized power in a coup on February 1st. The National Unity Government, made up of pro-democracy politicians, including ousted members of the parliament, are calling for international recognition as the legitimate authorities, requesting an invitation to the ASEAN summit in place of the military leader. The invitation of Hlaing has been heavily criticized, as it means the military government is being recognized as the official government. The security forces have killed at least 737 protesters and bystanders since the coup. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.